everyone, I'm Kate Farrell with Familius, and I'm here with Jessica Speer, who is the author of one of our newest released books, BFF or NRF, Not Really Friends. Jessica, do you want to talk a little bit more about your background and what you hope to share today, but then also with your book in general?
Sure. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Jessica Speer, and what a great time for this webinar and this topic as we head back to school, as we, start to, emerge from this pandemic. So I'm just glad you could be here. I've got a background in social sciences, and I write books for preteens and teens that focus on social emotional stuff. So that's what we'll be diving into today. Okay. And let me pull up. Okay, I'm going to pull up. There, okay, there's a book that, thanks to my amazing publisher Familius, just came out this week. It's called BFF or NRF, Not Really Friends, A Girl's Guide to Happy Friendships. And I'm also the mom of two daughters. So they're now 13 and 15. I can't believe it. I started the process of writing this book way back when they were in elementary school. And what inspired that was when they were, about that age, friendship struggles started to emerge, which reminded me so much of my very own struggles, which then reminded me of the struggles of so many. So that just got me curious. I just started to dive into that just to get a better understanding of that. There's lots of great books and research on that. It led to a friendship program that I ran for girls, and that then led to this book. So that just brings us up to speed as to where we are today. But let me do a quick summary of what I'm hoping to cover in today's webinar. And I'm hoping to make this as informative for you as parents, as teachers, as caregivers, and as preteens and teens. I know we have some preteens and teens joining us today. So here's what we're going to talk about. First, why are friendship struggles so common in the teen and the preteen years? So what is going on there? Then I'm going to talk about just some simple truths that help to navigate through this time, and then how we all can support kids and teens through this period. We'll then do a quick quiz right from the book, just for fun. It's called How Healthy Are My Friendships? And then I'm hoping to spend the majority of time doing Q&A. So when you registered for this webinar, so many great questions came in that are so helpful for preteens, teens, and parents. So we're going to spend most of our time focusing on that. So let me dive right in, and let's talk about what is going on. So why is it then when girls and boys too, but especially girls, hit the preteen and the teen years that friendship struggles start to emerge? Well, when we really dive into this, there's a lot going on that starts to explain this. So one of the first things that happens, or sometimes it's second or third, but something that's going on, is preteens and teens start to really see their friends as their primary source of identity and support more than their families. So as parents, we know we start to see this, our kids may be pulling away, and this is 100% normal developmental phase. But what that does, preteens and teens start to place a lot more weight in their friendships. Okay, so that's a shift. It used to be, really we placed our weight in our family, but when the preteens hit, we start to shift that. So friendships take on greater importance. At the same time, preteens and teens are really exploring their identity, starting to question, who are they? And who are my friends, and what do I wear, and what do I love? And there's lots of, exploration there, maybe choosing different styles. Some kids start to explore their gender identity. So there's a lot going on there. So that plays into some friendship changes too. A couple more, just to add some more complexity to this phase, is confidence dips, especially for girls. So some studies show that between the ages of 8 to 14, confidence in girls can dip up to 30%. And of course, it's different for girl to girl, but it is a period of time where confidence is lower. So that also ripples through our relationships and our sense of self. And then the last big piece of this is puberty. So when we are all going through puberty, there's so much going on. There's physical changes, there's intellectual changes, there's emotional changes. And that piece, that emotional change, is a part of our brain that is triggered when we're going through puberty, where we feel our emotions really deeply. So, some of these friendship struggles, they hit really deeply. So that adds to things as well. So when we look at all of those four elements, I'll go back. So we've got, really placing a lot more emphasis in friends, really starting to explore our identity. We've got a confidence dip, and then we are feeling these big emotions. That's what's going on. And so that ripples through friendships, it triggers changes. And the end result, of course, is lots of change. So this is what we often see, starting in the preteen, carrying through the teen years. There's a lot of, trying to fit in. There might be drama in friendship groups and cliques. There's conflict, there's struggle, mistakes. And now let's throw on top of that a pandemic where kids are feeling really isolated right now. So there's a lot of change going on. And one study I love to share with both preteens, teens, and parents is out of UCLA. A couple years ago, a developmental psychologist studied 6,000 middle schoolers from 26 schools across the LA area. And she found that in sixth grade alone, 2/3 of the students, changed their friendships. So change is really the norm. So one thing I wanted to do when I was writing my book is help all of us remember that change is the norm, because sometimes we feel it's maybe just us. When I was working with kids in my friendship groups, it was a huge relief to girls, and I ran some groups for boys too, to know that this is not just them. This is all those elements going into play here. Everyone's kind of learning and growing and changing. Mistakes are super common because it's hard to navigate friendship changes. So we sometimes don't do them as well as we can. So staying open to change, and the pandemic has given us some good training for that. So we're kind of in a place now where we're getting better at dealing with this, and especially as kids head back to school, it's a great reminder to stay really open to change. I've got two daughters who have celebrated 2 birthdays now, through the pandemic. So I just think of even them, how different they are, how much they've changed in addition to growing like over a foot. They are different people, they have different interests. So I'm encouraging them as they get back to school just to stay really open. It's going to be really fun and interesting to see all the changes that their peers have made as well. So one resource that is in the book that I used in my program that is helpful for preteens and teens and families, it's called the Friendship Pyramid. So I've got it on the screen, and I realize some of the font is really hard. And so I'm just going to talk you through this. So you might not be able to read some of the small font, but as kids head back to school and as we navigate our friendships, this is what we try to keep in mind. So first of all, you'll see in the upper left in blue, friendships have different phases and change over time. All we can really control is ourselves and be the kind of friend we want to have, so that's what we've got to control. But that's actually a lot. We can control how we behave in friendships, how we choose, how we choose our friends. So we do actually have a lot in our control. So let me just walk you through quickly, the levels of this pyramid. So the top one, close friends, and underneath it says harder to find. And especially in the preteen, in the teen years, close friends are hard to find because of all those things we talked about earlier. It's hard to find those closer connections as kids are really exploring themselves and exploring friendships. So they're pretty rare. So there are times, in the preteen and the teen years where if you are in that age range, or your child might feel like they don't have someone here. And that can feel pretty groundless, but it's not at all uncommon. So stay away from thinking that there's something wrong with you. There's nothing. It's just at this phase of life, close friends are hard to find. And these are the friends where we have a real special connection with. There's a lot of trust there, a lot of connection. And over the course of our lives, we tend to have, just 1 or 2, maybe 3 of these close friends. So these are pretty special and rare. What's way more common, so the middle of the pyramid, the blue part, is friends. And so a lot of people fall into this, maybe classmates, neighbors, teammates. So these are friends that we know well, but not super well. We call them friends. We might not feel as comfortable as we might with a close friend. So maybe there's still still a little bit of awkwardness there. There's lots of mistakes and mess ups as everybody's learning, but they still are, considered our friends. So it's really important for everybody to have some kids that fall into this arena. And then underneath that, so the gold is acquaintances. And this is in my mind, the biggest part of the pyramid. So there are always people out there, possible friends, people we don't know that well. So I encourage all of you to stay open to that. Since there's so much change during this period, stay open to, meeting someone that is new and could grow into a friend, or maybe even a close friend someday. So you can see on this friendship pyramid that there's an arrow going along both sides. Up one side, change. Sometimes we have an acquaintance that slowly grows into a close friend, or sometimes we have a close friend and there's a falling out, and it might actually go back into an acquaintance, which is awkward and uncomfortable, but common. As we talked about with that UCLA study, 2/3 of kids in 6th grade, go through that, a big change. There's also lots of misunderstandings and mistakes as everybody's exploring this. So the one other thing I'll point out is at the bottom, actually underneath and separate from the friendship pyramid, is what I call not really friends, NRFs, and that's where the title of the book came from. So these are peers that you don't feel really safe with. So maybe they're nice to you some days, they're mean other days. There's been some breaches of trust, so untrustworthy. Maybe they've shared some personal information that you didn't want shared. Maybe you feel uncomfortable being yourself around them, even unsafe. Maybe they ask you to do things that you're really uncomfortable with. So that falls into that category where they're not really treating you like a friend. And this is where we have some caution. So we might not want to share real personal information. We might want to, set up some personal boundaries with this person until, they learn some skills, that where they can have some healthy friendships. So when I talk about NRFs, that's what I'm talking about there. So just to start to wrap this up so we can get to the quiz and some questions, throughout the book, I share 9 friendship truths. And so these truths are things that can help ground us in, really striving for good, healthy friendships and to be a good, healthy friend. And that takes time. So friendship is filled with all sorts of skills that we learn over time and we mess up all along the way. So friendship truth number 1 is our healthiest friendships feel pretty safe and accepting. Okay, so this is, getting towards the top of that pyramid. They're our healthiest friendships. They feel pretty safe. Safe meaning, we feel safe sharing things about ourselves, and we know it's going to be, kept in confidence if we wanted to. We feel they accept us as we are. But in this age, the preteens, the teens, those are harder to find. Okay, so it takes some patience, it takes some time, and in that time, we can just work on being that sort of friend ourselves. So truth number 2 is friendships have different phases and change over time. So I talked a lot about that when I was going through the friendship pyramid. So, just knowing that friendships do have lots of change and different phases helps us remember that, we're okay. We're all learning as we go. Sometimes a friendship that means a lot to us might end up ending, and that's really painful, and we need to work through that. But that is normal, especially in the preteen and the teen years. So try to avoid any stories we might make up about that, especially about ourselves or other people. And then third, everyone develops friendship skills at a different pace. And so this friendship truth helps us to try to take things less personally. Like I said, friendship takes a whole lot of skills, not only, trust, but cooperation and flexibility and listening. I mean, the list goes on. There's a lot of skills there. And we all have strengths and weaknesses when it comes to friendship. So there's friendship might not be right for you now, but it might be right for you again in the future. So staying open to that and just kind of working on our very own friendship skills. So I think, okay, we'll finish off with, so what do we do? Okay, so, and I have some preteens and teens on the call, and I'd love your thoughts. Feel free to add it to the chat. I'd love any thoughts of how else parents, teachers, caregivers might help when you are going through a tricky time in friendship. So we all want to help guide you through, the ups and downs in this road. They're kind of inevitable. We're going to have some friendship struggles. So what I usually talk to parents about is there's certain things we can do that will help. First is to listen really deeply. So we learn sometimes by sharing, by, putting words to our emotions, by processing out loud. So parents and caregivers can be that. They can really listen as preteens and teens, talk about what's going on. And as they talk through that, they tend to get clarity. We all do. When we start to really put words to what's going on, we start to get a little more clarity. It's super easy for caregivers to jump into advice and fix it mode. So as much as possible, try not to. Just allow kids and teens just to share. And sometimes you can ask, hey, would you like to vent, or would you just like advice? Because occasionally, they might like a little bit of advice, but they might just prefer someone to really, just to listen. The third thing that's super important is sometimes, when we see our child or our student really in pain, it can trigger something emotionally in us. So we get really emotionally triggered, and that kind of hijacks us. So we're no longer, helping our student or our child through this. We are now triggered ourselves. So as much as possible, parents, try to keep your emotions in check. Keep your reactions in check, because sometimes when we react in a big way, our preteens and teens might stop sharing with us. And those on the call can correct me if I'm wrong, but it helps if parents don't also get triggered through this as well. And they can be kind of our safe haven where we can come with our big uncomfortable emotions. And the last thing is to avoid labels and assumptions. So typically there's always more to the story than what's going on. We're hearing a perspective, but there's tends to be a lot more to it. So try not to jump to conclusions. Encourage your preteens and teens to try to not to jump to conclusions or label people. Labels tend to really stick. And as we saw, earlier, that change is so common. We're changing all throughout this phase of our lives. So let's see if we can avoid putting labels on people, because everybody's growing and changing. Everybody's learning as they go. So not labeling our own kids, not labeling other kids, and just trying to work through each situation as it comes up. So, and if you are concerned, I always encourage parents to get additional help. If you're concerned, if it seems like your child is especially isolated and lonely, don't hesitate to reach out, to maybe the school counselor or some other professional, to make sure that everything's okay there. So I believe that is everything I wanted to cover before we get to the Q&A and the quiz. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to go ahead and for fun, let's do one of the quizzes from the book. Okay, so here is the book. It's BFF or NRF, and the quiz I'm going to read it's chapter 1. How healthy are my friendships? And that's what it looks like. This book was illustrated by Elowen Dickerson. It's super, super cute illustrations, thanks to her. So I'm going to read just the intro and then the instructions. So have a piece of paper handy, because we're gonna need it. So if you have something nearby, grab a piece of paper and a pen. So here we are, chapter 1, quiz. How healthy are my friendships? BFF, bestie, buddy. There are many ways to describe friends, but what really makes a good or close friend, and why do some friendships feel like a cozy robe while others feel like a scary movie? Sometimes we can figure out if a friendship is healthy or not by noticing how we feel after spending time with that friend. For example, if spending time with Keisha usually leaves you feeling happy and good about yourself, while spending time with Hazel leaves you feeling sad or confused, your friendship with Keisha is probably healthier. The following quiz will help you gain a better understanding of which of your friendships are healthy and which may need some work. So here's the instructions, quiz instructions. Think of one friend as you read through the quiz and mark the best responses. Be sure to answer honestly so you get a true understanding of that friendship. Take the quiz over again for as many friends as you'd like. Okay, so on your piece of paper, you're going to number it down one side, 1 through 10. So I've got 1 through 10. And then at the top, you're going to put three columns. AA, which is almost always, S, which is sometimes, and AN, which is almost never. Okay, so each of these questions, your response is either going to be almost always, sometimes, and almost never. All right, and then always before my quizzes, there is a super duper important message. And this one is keep your responses to the quiz private or share only with a trusted adult. This quiz is intended for your personal awareness and should not be used to criticize or judge others. And when I was running my friendship groups, when we would do this, I would actually have, the kids in the program tear up their responses afterward, just, so there was no chance that they would, share that with somebody else, because this really is about our own personal self-awareness. All right, so here we go. Quiz, how healthy is my friendship? Number 1, when problems come up, so you're thinking of one friend in your mind, everybody. So think of one friend. It could be any friend, a friend that feels really great, a friend you're wondering about. Number 1, when problems come up in our friendship, we find a way to work it out that feels fair. You're going to check either almost always, sometimes, or almost never. Number 2, if I share a secret with my friend, I know she'll keep it. She doesn't say mean things about others behind their backs. Almost always, sometimes, or almost never. Okay, number 3, I can share my thoughts and feelings with my friend, and she won't make fun of me or make me feel bad. Almost always, sometimes, almost never. 4, after we spend time together, I feel happy and good about myself. Almost always, sometimes, almost never. Number 5, when I share a big accomplishment, my friend is happy for me. She doesn't use that moment to share something she did better. Almost always, sometimes, almost never. Next, if my friend does or says something mean to me, she takes responsibility and apologizes. Her apology feels sincere, and I know she'll try not to make the same mistake again. Almost always, sometimes, or almost never. Number 7, my friend supports my interest and goals, even if they're different from hers. Almost always, sometimes, almost never. Number 8, if my friend doesn't feel jealous, my friend doesn't feel jealous or threatened when others join our activities. She doesn't make me feel bad if I spend time with others. My friend doesn't feel jealous or threatened when others join our activities. She doesn't make me feel bad if I spend time with others. Number 9, I know my friend would stand up for me. Number 10, our friendship is equal. I'm not always the leader or the follower. So now go ahead and add up the checks in your column. See how many you've got in almost always, how many you've gotten sometimes, how many you've got in almost never, and I'm going to read you the results. So here is the cute graphic that is on the results page. So quiz results, how healthy is my friendship? If you marked 8 or more almost always, congratulations. This sounds like a healthy friendship. This friendship feels safe and accepting. You can share your thoughts and feelings with this friend because she's kind and respectful. And this friendship feels balanced because you listen to each other's ideas and work together to find fair solutions to problems. Note, If this description does not fit your friendship, double check your responses. Maybe this friendship fits more into the sometimes description below. Okay, so now I'm going to read the sometimes description. If you marked 3 or more sometimes, no friendship is perfect, but if several of your responses were sometimes, this friendship may need some work. Possibly you and this friend can improve sharing feelings, listening, and supporting each other. The Speaking Up in Friendships chapter of this book will help with communicating and problem solving. See if you can get a better understanding of what each of you might be doing or not doing that is keeping this friendship from feeling really good. Okay, then the last choice there is 3 or more almost nevers. Caution. This friendship may not be healthy, which means it doesn't feel safe and accepting. If time with this friend often leaves you feeling sad, frustrated, or bad about yourself, it's time to begin speaking up to improve this friendship or moving on and growing the friendships that light you up rather than deflate you. Taking a break from this friend may be difficult if you've known each other a long time. The Making New Friends and Taking Care of Myself chapters of this book will help as you decide the best path for you. So, and then this chapter ends, most chapters end with a friendship truth. So the friendship truth of this chapter, we talked about earlier, friendship truth number 1, healthy friendships feel safe and accepting. So notice how you did on that quiz, if you learned anything new about a friendship. And yeah, that is just one of the activities in the book that goes into, kind of exploring our relationships. The next quiz in the book are how are my friendship skills? So I try to balance, looking outward, but also looking inward because we're half of the friendships too. So I'm going to stop there, turn it back over to Kate, and we'll take it from there with questions.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That was wonderful. And that quiz is so great. I've shared it with a lot of people already.
Oh,
So,
good.
all right. So, I'm also going to share the link to buy the book on the Familius website in the chat too, just in case everyone wants to take the next quiz immediately. You can get your copies there. And then we'll go over to the questions that were submitted in advance of the webinar. But if you are tuning in now and you didn't ask your question before, or if more come up, feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen on Zoom. Okay, so we have quite a few, so we'll do our best to get through all of them. The first one is, how do you help your child recover from the heartbreak of someone turning out to be a NRF? So NRF.
Ooh, that's such a good question, because it really hurts when you have a friendship and it ends. Often one friend is not quite ready for that to end and the other one is. So how do you help? I think the best way to help is to help your preteen or teen just navigate that. It does hurt, and there's unfortunately no way to avoid the hurt. In fact, I encourage parents to help them just process the hurt, help them talk through that and feel the discomfort and feel the pain, because often, the only way is through it. If there's no avoiding the pain, we do have friendship changes throughout our lives. So, but by having you by their side, letting them know that all those big uncomfortable feelings are okay, it helps, to have you there as a sounding board, it helps. So I wish there was a different answer, but these things do hurt, and that's okay. So just being there for them, letting them process that and work through that, and then giving the time it needs to heal.
That's a great answer. Okay, the second one is, how do I keep my daughter away from frenemies?
Ooh, good question too. Okay, so frenemies. So I have to clarify that, so I call them not really friends. Sometimes it's frenemies, and that's both different from bullies. So let me start first by clarifying to make sure it's not a bullying situation. So bullying, there's 3 things that bullying has in common. One, it's pretty aggressive and harsh. So it doesn't have to be physical, but it could be verbally, socially, emotionally aggressive, pretty aggressive. It tends to be repeated, and there's a power imbalance. It could be a real or even a perceived power imbalance, like a much more powerful kid versus someone who has less power. So if those 3 things are there, and there is repeated, aggression and harm, whether it's in person or online, that's bullying, and that needs to stop. So I would encourage preteens and teens to really look at what they can do to get that to stop. What resources do they have? Is there a confidential reporting line? Is there a school counselor? How can they get that to stop? And, parents, helping to get that to stop in a way that is comfortable for the preteen and teen. Sometimes, there's ways that they are, comfortable addressing that, and there's ways they're uncomfortable. So make sure you are, navigating this in a way that the preteen and teen are comfortable with, but that's got to stop because bullying is never okay. Okay. So, but I see that different as like a not really friend or a frenemy. So this is, there's no power imbalance there, but there is some mean, rude, maybe some uncomfortable behavior. So that is also something that we come across our whole life. So those folks are there. And so what we can do is, these are not the people that we want to put a lot of energy into. So, they're not the friends that we want to put a lot of energy into. We also don't want to disclose really personal information or maybe our deeper feelings. I wish kids could totally avoid them, but they can't. There's a good chance that every year there might be, a frenemy or an NRF in their classroom or, in their school. So they're there. I think what we realize is that we can put kind of an invisible boundary there just by not sharing certain information with them, by being kind, but not really, reaching out to extend a friendship there, just being kind and respectful, treating them with dignity, but also, making sure that we are not putting ourselves in a position to, be harmed. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you. This question is just what should I be looking for? And I don't know if they're talking about healthy or not so healthy friendships. So if you could kind of speak to both briefly, I know we've covered it a little bit, that would be great.
Yeah. So what should I be looking for? And I wonder if that question is about, yeah, what should I be looking for in friendship, or what should I be looking? Do you think that's, yeah, what in friendship?
I'm not sure if it's from a parent or from a preteen or a teen.
Okay. Let's tackle this two ways. So what should I be looking for in friendship? I would notice the friends that make you feel like you can really be yourself, that you really feel comfortable sharing who you really are. But knowing that's not super common. As we talked about, at the very tip of that pyramid is the close friends, and they're pretty hard to find. So a lot of your friends are going to fall into that middle zone friends. But even within that group, there's going to be some of those friends that feel, pretty comfortable. You feel pretty comfortable being yourself. So I would be looking for that, noticing which friends you feel really comfortable being yourself, that are treating you with kindness and respect, then you're returning that to them. So that's what I would be looking for, and realizing, as we move through the preteen and the teen years, we sometimes look for different things in friendship. One thing I always remember with one of my daughters, both my daughters are more on the quiet side. So they're drawn to friends that, talk a lot more than they do, because it's really tiring for them if they have to carry the conversation. So sometimes we're looking for things in friends that are kind of unique. Like they love that if a person is super talkative, because they're not. Or I've worked with some girls in the past that maybe don't have a ton of confidence. So they're really drawn to a friend that has a lot of confidence, because they can learn from that friend. So there's also these unique things that we're looking for in friendship. The other interpretation to that, what should I look for, maybe came from a parent, and what should I look for in my daughter's, friendship. I would just keep those open conversations with your daughter about, how her friendships are going, how she's feeling in those friendships. Again, trying to avoid, judgment, labels, and advice, but just, be a sounding board so she can process her friendships out loud with you, and what she's learning, and what's making her uncomfortable, and what's super exciting and fun for her. So that's how, by doing that, you'll be able to kind of stay in touch with what's going on in her life as far as friendships go.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, the next one is what if the friendship is with your twin sister and sometimes it's hard to get along? And I feel like this question can probably also just be generalized to siblings in general.
Yes. Boy, and I can totally relate to that, because I grew up with two brothers. I feel like we fought all the time. And, possibly that feeds into why I'm so into healthy relationships now, because, we fought all the time. So one thing we can do is, and this is, I go into detail in the book, is conflict is inevitable. We're going to have conflict, but how we respond in conflict makes all the difference. The words we choose really matter. How we hold our bodies really matter. So in the book, I talk about coming from a place of I call it I power, their I statements. So instead of saying, you always go first, or it's all your fault, you say, I feel really frustrated because to me, it feels like you're always going first. So by doing that, the person we're having a struggle with doesn't feel like they need to be on the defensive. If I said, you always go first, the first thing they're going to think is the time that they didn't. So they're already like, no, I do not, but if you from a place of hopefully a little calm say, I feel really frustrated because it feels like you're always the one going first. So watching what we're saying, and sometimes, it's great to cool down before we respond. So when we're really agitated, when we're really frustrated and mad, our first initial knee-jerk reactions tend not to be our best. So, if you're with your siblings, you might need to say, hey, I'm calling a timeout. I need to just go take the dog for a walk. I need to take a break, and let's talk about this when I get back. So just calling a timeout and making an agreement in your relationship that anybody can call for a timeout at any point if somebody's getting really worked up in a conflict. So those are two things that might help as conflicts come up.
Sure, that's great. And I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit because I feel like it's relevant to the last question that you just answered. Does this advice apply to adult friendships as well?
Absolutely. I think a lot of the information in this book is just feeds right into adult relationships. So it's really, foundational information for healthy friendships. So yes, absolutely. How we communicate, how we choose friends, how we treat our friends. It all feeds into adult relationships too.
Definitely. Let's see. What should I do if my child isn't making any friends at all?
Yeah, and this has been a tough time for that, for sure, with the pandemic. So there's a lot of families really concerned with this right now because we've had so much time at home isolating, and even in normal years. So what I would suggest is, when it's safe to do so, one way to really encourage friendships is, figure out what it is that your preteen or teen loves to do, and can you get them involved in that in a safe way? When the time is right, can you, if they love soccer, can they get involved in the soccer club? If they love art, can they take some art classes? So one great way to meet people is by doing things that you enjoy, and they enjoy too, and you're both there together, in some sort of scheduled format, and you get to know each other over time. So that's one thing to do. The other thing is, teachers are brilliant at this. I would talk to if they're going to a physical school, talk to the teacher and just privately let them know that, hey, you're kind of worried about your son or daughter, and you'd love if they can help connect them with maybe another student in the class. And teachers are great at that. And while you're talking to the teacher, you can also find out, is there something that's going on? Is there something your child is doing that might be inhibiting the friendship? So sometimes, friendship is filled with lots of skills. So maybe there's something that is happening that is, inhibiting that. So, in the younger years, sometimes little kids don't realize, there's this, invisible space boundary between people. So if they're always in someone's space boundary, people start to back away from them. Or let's say another example, your child hasn't quite learned how to be flexible in a friendship. So they're pretty hard to play with. It's hard to play a game because they're inflexible. So, teachers or other adults in their life might be able to give you some information about a skill that, you can help them work on to help with their friendships as well.
That's great. Um, how can I help my 11-year-old daughter work through the pettiness of hot and cold friendships of that age group, friends today but don't even see me tomorrow, and be comfortable with herself no matter what, enough to reach out to create new friendships?
And I get that. I think sometimes things get so petty and, you just want to step away, and girls sometimes want a break, and boys too, like, they're just over the drama. Sometimes that all falls into the drama bucket sometimes. One thing that helps is, just remind her that she doesn't have to be involved in this. One thing I always joked about with my friend is they can be, and my daughters, is they can be Switzerland. They don't have to step in. Switzerland is neutral country. They just don't get involved in anybody else's wars. So, teach her to be Switzerland. So if there's a lot of drama, she knows that she's going to step out, and she can even say that. So, hey guys, this doesn't really involve me. I'm gonna stay out of the situation. But I hope you guys figure this out. So just being really neutral through all this might be helpful. Not getting involved. Hot and cold friendships are part of that phase that we talked about earlier. So why are friendship struggles happening? And it's those things like some kids are testing their identities. They're testing, what is it like to have a lot of power? What is it like to try to be really popular? What is it? So there's a lot of testing going on. So there is going to be some hot and cold. But remember, the one thing we can control is ourselves and how we behave in friendships. So always encouraging preteens and teens just to be the kind of friend they want to have. That's all they can really do. And to look for friends that have really healthy friendship skills, which is not always the kids that have the most friends. One of the friendship truths in the book is sometimes the girls with the most friends don't make the best friends. Sometimes the girls with not that many friends make really good friends. So just keep an eye out for the girls that have the qualities that you're looking for in friendship.
Okay, so there's two that are somewhat similar to wrap things up. And then again, if anyone wants to submit questions, feel free to do so in the Q&A. How do I encourage kids who think they have no friends?
Yeah, and it's easy to get really down if you feel like, you are getting left out, or, so I could see it, kids do get down on this. Sometimes it feels lonely. So I would encourage, teachers and parents, just to remind them if they do, say they do have a neighbor that they really get along with well, or they do have even a cousin, remind them of the people they have in their life that do really care about them, and always encourage them to stay open to new friends. Sometimes it's hard, if we are just coming out of a friendship and we're recovering from that, just as much as we can to stay open to new friends, stay open to changes in people. It's fun to have, I've got a high schooler now. And so looking back, some friends that maybe were, she struggled with in early years, they have totally changed, and so has she. So they have a different relationship now. So everybody is growing and changing. Stay open to that change, stay open to new friends, and to just keep growing ourselves.
Right, the last one that we have for now is, I'm worried that my daughter doesn't have friends. How will I know and encourage her if she doesn't have any friends?
I would, of course, keep, talking with her, not in a way that feels like you're really interrogating her, but, talk to her about, hey, if you had something, like a secret you wanted to share, is there any friend that you would feel comfortable sharing that with? Just kind of some fun questions like that. And if you're getting the sense that maybe, she doesn't have anyone she really connects with, this is a great time, as we talked about earlier, again, to maybe connect with the school, connect with the teacher and see if the teacher can help get her connected. School counselors sometimes run friendship groups. Often the girls that would end up in the friendship groups I was running were in between friends, and there's always girls that are in between friends. So, connecting with the counselor, they might be able to connect with someone else who's looking for friendship. So, this is where parents do, we can get in and help a little bit more. We can maybe behind the scenes do some things to help her, get her involved in activity, because it is really important for all kids to have someone that falls into their friend bucket, someone who they feel comfortable if they wanted to share something personal, someone who makes them feel really accepted. So every kid needs that. So I would behind the scenes as a parent, keep trying to help them get connected so they've got that in their life.
That's great advice. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. This has been wonderful. And just a reminder again for everyone watching, you can buy the book directly from the link that I put in the chat, or you can also buy it anywhere books are sold. And then, Jessica, do you want to kind of talk about where people can find you if they want to follow you online or check out any other advice you might have in the future?
Sure. And thank you everybody for tuning in. I hope it was helpful. Best of luck as we head back to friendships and back to school. The easiest place to find me is on my website. So it's jessicaspeer.com, SPEER, and that has a link to all my socials. And you're also, if you're interested in this sort of, getting updates on this, I send out a monthly e-newsletter. And for signing up with that, you'll get a little PDF version of that friendship pyramid that I talked about today. So, that's kind of nice to have on the fridge as you go through this school year, because it helps to, again, illustrate some really healthy friendship skills and serve as a good reminder that, change is common, misunderstandings are common, what composes some healthy friendships. So that is on my website when you sign up for my e-newsletter too. But yeah, feel free to reach out with questions too. I've got a contact page. You're more than welcome to send me questions. And I just appreciate you, participating today.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you everyone for watching.
Thanks, Kate.
If you liked this webinar, go to Familius.com for books, articles, and more content that will help your family be happy. Be sure to sign up for the Familius Habit Hub newsletter and be alerted when new webinars go live, because every family deserves to be happy.